Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay, so I was asked to speak about service is spirituality, the roots of fruitful service. And what that brought to mind was how service is almost like a tree. That a tree is something that it doesn't just grow, or you can have a tree grow that's wild, but it really needs to have a really strong tree that bears fruit. It really needs care and concern. So it's similar to the analogy of service, that we really need to tend to this tree of service, that through watching this tree and caring for it in a certain way, that you can strengthen it. And once you strengthen it, it's able to give shade to other people, and it's able to bear fruit that gives the maximum benefit. So if I'm to follow this analogy of the tree, there's things we can do for the tree, or the tree of service, if we call it that can benefit that tree, and there are things that we can do that will harm that tree. So to start with, I'll actually start with the harms that we can do to the tree of service, and then I'll talk about what we can do to strengthen it. So when we talk about service and being somebody who brings benefit to the community, it's important to be a person that is very aware of their actions, firstly. So when you're working with a group of people, that one seeks to avoid any kind of sinful actions, because when you're working for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're looking for His pleasure, and any benefit that you're able to bring about, it's only through His grace and mercy. It's not through ourselves, or you had a certain talent and you were able to bring about a certain successful event. Rather, it's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has that mercy on you and your group, when you're working together with that group of people, that success is brought about. So what that group needs to be aware of, that they need to watch out for, is number one, watching out for sinful actions that one can commonly occur with groups of people. The first one that I want to talk about was this is a random way of going around it, but the first one is whenever they do events as a group, that firstly one sees that any fruit or benefit brought about by that person or the organization, that it's all from the grace and mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That one doesn't say, oh, you know, it's through our talent, it's through our strength, it's because we all work together it came about. That one always attributes every success one has to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's not because of particular individuals that certain projects succeed. It's through His ultimate grace and mercy. Secondly, one that's very common, especially with MSAs, with the younger groups of people who are working together, and it's usually the younger people working together. But a very common pitfall is also gender interaction, because we have brothers and sisters who are coming together to work on projects over a long period of time. And so what can sometimes happen is that, you know, people start to let down their guard. They get to be a little bit too relaxed with the opposite gender just because they're working with them for a long time. And then they start to, you know, be quite, some groups, they can start to get quite chummy, right? So it's something to be aware of, because once your group does something as a group that earns the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that takes away the barakah of that group. So when you're working together for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's the strength of the group. And the shaitan is always trying to subvert these kinds of groups that are trying to bring light to the community. And this is one of the ways of doing it, that he'll seek to slide into their actions things that are disliked, things that, you know, are not pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that actually earn his anger. And that's when the barakah or success of that organization can be taken. So it's very important to, you know, each gender should maintain their dignity. You know, you work, you know, with the opposite gender, but, you know, there's certain limits, right? And you work together to bring about the success, and always have that respect and formality that doesn't get removed at any time, no matter how well you get to know the people, because the group becomes like your family. But at the same time, you know, it's just not appropriate for example, an MSA exec to go out for lunch together and hang out, like, and that's real things that happen. So we have to look at what is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a group at all times, and always make that the focus or goal of coming together. Another one of the main kaba'ir or sins that can take place is a lot of backbiting or politics when people are working together, that people start talking about one another, or look at so and so, they really messed up that thing, we got to get somebody, like they start, you know, speaking about people in a way that's very derogatory, right? And so we always have to have that respect for one another, that husna dhan, holding other people in a good opinion. And so like work as a group to bring out the best in each other, and don't be people who knock one another down. So that's the first type of damage that one can do to their service tree. The other one that I wanted to talk about was when you're nurturing that tree, one thing that can also stunt it is if one overcommits to too many projects. So one has that, you know, maybe you were really inspired by Shaykh Faraz's talk, and you want to be somebody who contributes, you know, after listening to him. But it's really important to know your limits. Like, you know what commitments you already have, whether it be with your family, you know, your work, other things that you do. You have to have a realistic picture of how much time you can give to a certain project that you're working on when you're doing service. So that if you overcommit, and I believe this is one of the roots of the shaitan as well, that we try to take on too much, and when we take on too many projects at once, that we're not able to succeed in any of those projects. So one should know their limits and take what you take on, you should do to the best of your ability, and don't go beyond that limit, because if you overdo it, you're going to take on too much, you're going to let down the team members involved, and none of those things will succeed or come to fruit. So it's important to take on only what you can do well. The last way of harming that tree of service is wasting time, and Shaykh Faraz talked a lot about that, and how it's so important to be organized with one's time management, that a lot of people think they don't have time to do for service, but in reality, you know, it's almost every waking moment that we have that you're seeking to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the best way possible, and especially for the sisters, like, you know, you're just always continuously you know, serving the people around you, whether it be you know, first there's the circle of the things you need, but then there's the circle of your family, there's the circle of, you know, your parents, other extended relatives, then there's the community, you know, so we're always seeking to use the time in the best way. So if you don't use your time in the best way possible, what's that saying? There's a saying, if you with the sword, if you don't use the sword to cut time, it's going to cut you, something along that line. So it's really important to have a very strong degree of time management, that every waking moment that you use, you're seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from everything you do, even the most mundane acts of, you know, you see a tissue on the ground, you pick it up seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like, you know, putting away clothes, cooking food, cleaning the house, and then taking it outside the house. Let's look at the believers in the community. Like, we need to turn people's hearts to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that people often these days, like the dunya is always calling to people and, you know, enticing them to, you know, get a bigger house or better car, or, you know, have a, you know, do the social networking thing, or, you know, have a certain circle of friends. Like the dunya is always enticing people until they forget the reason that they were created, which was to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and be in a state of remembrance of Him. So when we use our time to help other people to improve themselves, that this is a way that we can maximize our time and use it for the utmost benefit, to bring about the utmost benefit to the most number of people we can. Because it's very easy to live in your own little world, and I have work to do, I'm very busy, but the reality of the matter is there's a lot of work to do. We have, especially, I don't have to tell people about, you know, what the media is saying about Islam and Muslims and the kind of, you know, garbage they're trying to put out as the meaning of Islam. Like, we have work to do to change that image, and it has to be done with wisdom. There are some people who are saying, you know, you need to come overseas and fight, and this is the way to bring about the change. That's not the way. The way is to bring about more knowledge to the community. A lot of the community has lost touch of, you know, what it means to be a worshipper of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What are the rulings of the sacred law? They need to be given those opportunities to seek knowledge and to be encouraged towards knowledge. So we need as many people as possible to be calling people to that good. And an excellent way to follow up on this topic is Ustadh Amjad Tarsin, who's speaking after, is he teaches a text called Dawat Temma, and it's available on SeekersHub Global. And you can register for that course, Dawat Temma, The Complete Counsel, right? The Complete Counsel. It's a book by Imam Haddad where he talks about the importance of bringing about change, right? And how to be a caller to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that course, it's a 12-lesson course. I really recommend it. It's you can register for it in the middle of October, because right now the current class schedule is in place. And then when we talk about how to strengthen the tree of service, what can you do to become somebody who is able to help other people and to make time for service? There are a couple things that can help you to become one of these type of people that bring about change. One was, and I think this is the heart of what I was supposed to talk about, but having a strong daily routine of you know, remembrance and you know, it's personal time between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's that you wake up early. You know, firstly, that one has one's 5 prayers in order, that people are praying the 5 prayers and seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, when they're praying, turning their heart completely to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in need for those 5 prayers. But then, and once that's in place, taking it a step beyond, that one is a person that tries to get up and prays at least 2 rakat of tahajjud, you know, the night prayer, which is before Fajr. It's a voluntary prayer that one wakes up for, and you know, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at that time for like to give you tawfiq and success, and to make you of the best of believers, and to help, you know, and pray for the ummah, pray for your fellow believers, and, you know, the troubles of our times. They also say to pray for, you know, the other students. Ustadha Shireen really put that in my head during the retreat, that we need to really, you know, pray for one another at such special times. And also in this daily routine, so one should be waking up at that time and turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with one's needs and asking Him grant the ummah success. And this is one of the attributes of somebody who is of service, that they are, you know, continuously turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at these special times. Because the mistake that can sometimes be made is that, you know, sometimes people commit to a lot of volunteer hours, but they're not working on their hearts. They're not working on their own relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that it almost becomes like something that they do when other people are watching, which is a very dangerous position to be in, that one only does volunteer work, you know, when other people are around, and that's the only time they're concerned about you know, helping out. That the helping out is just one of the fruits of that relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that when one is seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, with the very core of their being, that they seek to please Him in all ways possible. So service is just one of those manifestations, that you seek to help other people to become better Muslims, you know, as a part of this bigger picture. And also, when we talk about strong daily routines, it's important to, for example, have a daily word of or daily routine of reading the Qur'an, you know, and spending time on understanding the meanings behind it, because these special times, you know, when it's you know, silent in the house and you're just reading and reflecting, that this almost fuels that internal battery, that you're able to bring about change and do work and service for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what you'll find is that if you don't have that special time where you're connecting with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, having that almost intimate discourse with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at these special times, that you won't have the energy that is needed by somebody who gives service. Because, you know, a common complaint is, well, I'm too tired, I've got too much to do. But when you make these times, it almost fuels that internal battery, so that you're able to have that strength and give that time. And just as an aside too, it's when we're talking about the knowledge and reflection, and another point that will help you as a strong daily routine is the importance of one's health. And that's something that a lot of people put aside, especially the young people. They don't think about, you could talk about that, but there's a wellness advocate here. but a lot of people don't give thought to, you know, their health, their eating habits, and how often they exercise, right? And so they only start thinking about it once they hit, you know, their late 30s or 40s, when they find they don't have the energy to do things anymore. So it's very important to have a daily routine of eating well, thinking about what you're putting in your body to fuel yourself, and also the exercise, because that helps to get out a lot of toxins from the body, and it also gives you a lot more strength. So then when we start saying, well, I'm too tired, how can I have more time for volunteer work, you actually have a lot more energy if you start to have good, healthy habits. Okay, and then as another point in what can strengthen that tree of service, which Shaykh Faraz talked a lot about, was the importance of one's intention. That one's intention in when they're serving the community is something that, it helps them to have that strength to continue and to keep serving people on a regular basis. And it's not just, when we talk about service isn't just something that's in the public sphere. It starts right from the home, you know, like serving one's family, that everyone, not just the sisters, but the brothers as well, helping out at home. You know, that there's a reward in that, because you're serving your family, seeking to make things easy for the people you're living with. That earns reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's also one of the sunnahs of the Prophet ﷺ that he was somebody who helped out at home. And then enlarging that spirit, like once one can, you know, once you're organized with your time, that you're taking care of your family commitments, that you can enlarge in that sphere so that you're able to benefit even more people, right? And once you're able to do that, that you're able to benefit even more people. So that's the benefit of taking care of one's time, is that when you take care of your time, you're able to benefit your family, but then benefit even more believers on a wider scale. And they say that with that intention and commitment to service, that one seeks to serve in any way possible, that it doesn't matter if you're the person who is, fixing the shoes outside or cleaning the toilets, that you're just here to serve. It doesn't matter where you are in the room. If you're the MC or you're someone at the back of the room, always seek out what can you do to help? What can you do to bring about change? Imam Ghazali, in the book The Beginning of Guidance, he talks about 3 groups of people. And he says the first group are the people who are like angels, and that's the group that whenever they're in a gathering, they're seeking to help the people who are in that gathering. They're seeking to, make things easier, bring about benefit, be a person who's serving. Maybe they're the people who are giving out water, or, just preferring everyone else to themselves and trying to help. So that's the first group, and that's the best of groups. The second group that he mentions in that text is to be like a stone, that you're in the gathering and you're not bringing any benefit to anyone, but you're also not harming anyone. It's just like you're there, but there's no harm, there's no benefit in your presence. And the last group that he talks about is the person who's like a scorpion, so that when they're in a gathering, they're actually bringing about harm to the other people around them, that they, perhaps begin gossiping, saying, did you hear this? Did you hear that? Or, harming the believers present, or calling them to something that's negative, or that would, get them thinking along the wrong kinds of lines. So always seek to be a person who brings about benefit in the gathering through whatever means possible that you can do. And also, when we talk about intention and commitment to service, another reason or drive that would help you to be a person of service is the knowledge that through good deeds, our bad deeds are wiped out. So the more we work or serve other people, if we can just get our act together so that we have everything in order, firstly with our homes, and then secondly to start contributing to the community, this is a means, or anytime you're doing things for other people, that this is a means of wiping out these sins on your record. And who here does not want that? That there's so much that we have, mistakes that we've made in the past, that this is actually a means of wiping that out and not starting over with a fresh plate, but wiping that out. And so when you have that knowledge and certainty in that it drives you to be a person who can, help other people in whatever way possible, even if it seems like something minor, even a smile to a believer, subhanAllah, that earns you a reward. So like anything you can do for other people, it cleans your record. And it's important that that there are a group of believers in our time who are ready to stand up and defend our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and what he brought as teachings to the ummah, that we need to spread that benefit, that a lot of people, they don't have that knowledge of what Islam really is. They just see what's on the news and they just believe it, right? We have to be people who bring about that light that repels that kind of darkness. And so if there are not enough believers who are striving in that regard, that darkness starts to spread. So we need to be people who are committed to that and committed to bringing about that change. And it's important that with every type of service that we bring on, that we always turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and bring about and ask Him for that success. So the example that that I really love is that the story of Fatima Fihri with the Qarawiyyin, that she was a person who her father was a wealthy businessman, and when he passed away, he left all of his money to his 2 daughters. So Fatima Fihri, she was one of these daughters, and the sister also worked with her. But she used that inheritance to build a university, to educate people so that they would become people of knowledge, and that became a focal point for that country and the surrounding countries that in Morocco that scholars would flock to, and it brought about like a tremendous change. So, and when you read about the story of Fatima Fihri, that she used to go to the work site and she would be, you know, following all the details with the construction workers that were building the university, that she was in a state that she was constantly turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and asking for the success with that project, that she was someone who fasted I believe the majority of the days, if not all of them, of that project when the Qarawiyyin was being built, that she was in a state of fasting and turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to ask him for success for that project. So likewise, when we take on projects, that we're in a serious state of asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the success of those projects. And lastly, as a point of what we can do to strengthen the tree of being a person of service, is that we have to have good character with the team members that we work with, that we're somebody who is easy to get along with, easy to work with, you know, be easygoing with the people around us. And what's really incredible is that there's this saying that I once heard that, you know, everyone comes to the table with different strengths. Each person in this room has different strengths, right? So it's when we come together to work together that each of those strengths complements the other, right? So you might think, I don't have anything to contribute, I'm not really somebody who's talented. There are talents with every single individual. So when you bring that to the table and people work together, that brings about the strength and success of organizations. The saying was that if people were all created equal, they would have no need of each other. That it's because of the diversity of humanity. That's what brings about the strength, that each person has a different specialty or knack for things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has graced them with. So when we work together, that is brought about. And they say that it's one of the means of shukr, that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you a certain talent in a certain field and you use it for the good, that is thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that blessing. And it's important to also, as a team, that one always works to you know, strengthen their knowledge of how to do their work in the best way, that you're not just content going from event to event, but that you also spend time learning about best practices in working with teams, and you know, getting the most contribution you can from the team that you're working with, so that you bring out the strengths of all of those individuals. In the last Sirah class, Shaykh Faraz was just talking about the wisdom of when the adhan was revealed, that how when the companion had the dream of the adhan, he wasn't the one who was asked to give the adhan, right? That the Prophet ﷺ called on Bilal ibn Rabah to come and to give the adhan, and that's because he was a person who saw like the talents that people had, and he would bring out the best in the people who worked with him and who were around them, who were around him at that time. So likewise, we should also be people who, you know, bring out the best in the people that we work with, have the best character with them, and really seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through everything that we do. So we should seek to avoid the different things that I had talked about earlier, that the different sins that groups can get involved with, avoid overcommitting to projects, avoid wasting time, like Shaykh Faraz mentioned, and we should focus on, as the positive points were, that we should have a strong daily routine of worship, have that intention and commitment to service that is purely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and no other reason, and that we have good character with the people that we work with and seek to strengthen one another, just as the hadith mentions that believers are like, you can help me with that hadith, the believers are like a building that they come to. Each part reinforces the other. So that's all I wanted to say about that. And also, just lastly, if anyone's interested in getting involved with, for example, SeekersHub, or we have the On the Ground Center, or online, we have the online services. If anyone's interested in putting in some time, they can come and talk to me afterwards about what area they'd be interested in getting involved with, and I can help you get started with that. But not that SeekersHub is the only place to volunteer at, but because there's also many other organizations. But in terms of our organization, if you want help getting involved, just let me know, inshallah. Jazakallahu khair.